There's a photograph almost every American family took at some point in the 1970s. A long Ford Country Squire parked in a suburban driveway, fake wood paneling running down both doors, 3 rows of seats, and a tailgate wide enough to seat the whole neighborhood. You probably remember climbing into the way back of a wagon like that, lying flat against the rear glass while your dad cruised down the interstate with no seatbelt and absolutely zero concern. And almost nobody wants to admit this today, while the whole country lines up to buy yet another identical gray crossover. Those old station wagons were cooler, faster, and far more clever than basically any SUV rolling out of a dealership right now. That isn't just nostalgia talking. The Buick Roadmaster estate wagon literally shared its engine with the Chevrolet Corvette. So before you write the wagon off as your grandparents' car, let me walk you through the proof. To understand how good these things got, you have to go back to where the station wagon actually started, and it started as a piece of working machinery. In the 1920s and 30s, a depot hack was a stretched, wood-bodied vehicle that hotels and train stations used to haul passengers and their luggage from the railway platform. Ford turned this into a proper product, and by 1950 the Ford Country Squire arrived wearing genuine wood trim along its flanks. Those first Country Squires from 1950 and 1951 were the last true woodies Ford built. By 1952, Ford swapped the real timber for all-steel bodywork with wood grain applique, partly to cut costs and partly because actual wood rotted, warped, and needed sanding and varnishing like a wooden boat. People genuinely loved that fake wood, though, and that detail tells you something about the wagon's whole personality. It was a working vehicle that decided to dress up, but the wagon didn't stay a humble luggage hauler for long, because the 1950s turned it into a style icon. This is where the story gets fun. As America moved to the suburbs and the baby boom filled those new ranch houses with kids, the family wagon became the default vehicle of the post-war dream, and Detroit went all in. In 1955, Chevrolet built the Nomad, a 2-door wagon based on the Bel Air with hardtop styling, chrome ribbing on the tailgate, and a roofline so sharp that collectors still chase clean examples today. Think about that for a second, because a 2-door sport wagon is the kind of thing no manufacturer would dare build now. The Nomad wasn't designed to be sensible. It was designed to be gorgeous, and it carried the same tail fins, 2-tone paint, and wraparound glass as the prettiest coupes of the era. The family hauler had become a showpiece, and the driveway version of jewelry. And Chevrolet wasn't working alone, because every brand in Detroit fielded its own flagship wagon and treated it like a halo product. Pontiac sold the Safari, Mercury offered the wood-grained Colony Park, Chrysler had the Town and Country, and Buick ran the estate wagon at the top of its range. These were enormous, low, chrome-drenched machines, some stretching well past 18 feet of polished sheet metal, with power tailgates and roof racks built for cross-country road trips to the Grand Canyon and Yellowstone. The wagon also wired itself straight into American pop culture in a way no SUV has ever managed. Surfers in California strapped longboards to the roofs of wood-bodied wagons and turned the Woody into a symbol of the entire beach scene, the same image the Beach Boys sang about and printed across their album covers. Families backed their wagons up to the drive-in theater screen, folded down the tailgate, and turned it into a private balcony for the movie. The station wagon did far more than move people around. It became the stage where a huge slice of post-war American life actually happened, from the morning carpool to the summer vacation to the Friday night double feature. That brings us to the part of the story I find genuinely impressive, which is the engineering, because these wagons solved problems modern SUVs still fumble. Take the Oldsmobile Vista Cruiser, built from 1964 through 1977. Oldsmobile raised the rear roof and installed fixed glass skylights above the second row, plus glass panels running along the raised cargo roof, so kids in the back rode under a greenhouse of daylight. It looked like a touring rail car, and that skylight roof was special enough that Oldsmobile only shared it with the Buick Sport Wagon. The Chevelle wagon and the Pontiac Tempest wagon never got it. Now compare that to a modern crossover, where the panoramic sunroof is a 4-figure option and the third row is a punishment seat. The Vista Cruiser handed your kids a view of the sky as standard equipment, and it did it 60 years ago. And the cleverness didn't stop at the roof, because the back of these wagons was a playground of engineering ideas. Ford built the famous magic doorgate, a tailgate that could swing open sideways like a door or fold down flat like a truck bed, so you didn't have to choose. The rear-facing third seat, the one every kid called the way back, let two more passengers ride looking out at the cars behind them, waving at strangers on the highway. The Buick Roadmaster estate that caped this whole era offered seating for 8 and a collapsible rear-facing third seat, and it swallowed 92 cubic feet of cargo with the seats down. That is genuinely more usable space than most 3-row SUVs sold today, in a vehicle that sat lower, drove better, and didn't tip its passengers around every on-ramp. The wagon figured out family hauling and then quietly perfected it. This is the moment, though, where you might assume the wagon was just slow and soft, and that assumption is dead wrong, because some of these things were monsters. Let me give you the headline example. From 1994 through 1996, the Buick Roadmaster estate wagon came with GM's 5.7-liter LT1 V8, the same basic engine family found under the hood of the contemporary Chevrolet Corvette. In the Buick, it made 260 horsepower and around 330 pound-feet of torque. So picture this wood-grain land yacht, 8 seats, a luggage rack on the roof, looking like the most harmless thing in the school pickup line, and underneath it breathes a Corvette-derived V8. People who bought sports cars in the 90s got genuinely embarrassed at stoplights by suburban parents in wood-paneled Buicks. That's not a myth somebody invented online. Buick built just under 55,000 of those LT1 Roadmaster wagons, and they remain the last full-size, body-on-frame, rear-wheel drive station wagons an American automaker ever made. And the Roadmaster wasn't some lonely exception, because the wagon had a long habit of hiding real muscle under the luggage rack. Its corporate twin, the Chevrolet Caprice estate, carried the same LT1 V8 and the same wood-grain flanks, and police departments across the country ordered the Caprice body precisely because that engine could chase down almost anything on the highway. Go back a couple of decades before that, into the muscle car years, and you'll find big block wagons you could order with the same 4-barrel V8s that powered the coupes your older brother lusted after. The real genius of the wagon was camouflage. Nobody ever expected the car with the roof rack and the kid waving from the way back to pull hard, which made it the ultimate sleeper. You got the cargo room of a moving van, the ride of a luxury sedan, and the punch of a sports car, all wrapped in a body the neighbors wrote off as boring. Try finding that exact combination on a dealer lot today, because the modern crossover hands you the height and the plastic cladding and almost none of that soul. So if the wagon was beautiful, clever, spacious, and secretly fast, you're probably wondering how on earth it ended up nearly extinct. And the answer has almost nothing to do with the cars themselves. The wagon didn't lose a fair fight in the showroom. It got killed by a rule written in Washington, and once you understand that rule, you'll never look at a modern SUV the same way again. In 1975, after the Arab oil embargo sent gas prices through the roof, Congress passed the Corporate Average Fuel Economy Standards, known as CAFE. The goal was reasonable enough, since lawmakers wanted automakers to build more efficient vehicles, but the rules split every vehicle into 2 buckets, and that split is where everything went sideways. The 2 buckets were passenger cars and light trucks, and the catch is that those 2 categories were never held to the same standard. Passenger cars had to hit a much tougher fuel economy target, while light trucks were allowed to be thirstier, with lighter penalties for missing the mark. The thinking was that farmers, contractors, and tradespeople needed real working pickups and vans, so those should get a gentler rule. Fair enough on paper, but a station wagon, no matter how big, was classified as a passenger car, which meant it had to meet the strict car standard, and that created a quiet, enormous incentive for every automaker in Detroit to figure out how to move their family haulers out of the car bucket and into the truck bucket. The first person to truly crack the loophole was Lee Iacocca at Chrysler, and his solution reshaped the entire American road. Iacocca took the basic idea of the family wagon, the people and cargo box on wheels, and reimagined it as the minivan, the Dodge Caravan and Plymouth Voyager that launched in 1983. Brilliant vehicle, genuinely, but the move that mattered for this story is that Chrysler certified the minivan as a light truck, not a car. Same job as a station wagon, hauling a family and their stuff, except now it lived in the relaxed regulatory category. The minivan got the gentler fuel rule, the lighter penalties, and a cost advantage the traditional wagon could never match. Detroit watched it work, and Detroit took notes. Once that door was open, the SUV came charging through it, and this is the part that really stings. Automakers realized they could take a truck chassis, bolt on an enclosed body with 3 rows of seats, and sell it to families as the new wagon, all while enjoying the light truck rules and, frankly, much higher profit margins. The Ford Explorer, the Chevy Suburban, the Jeep Grand Cherokee, these became the suburban default through the 90s and 2000s. The advantages stacked up beyond just fuel rules, too. The federal gas guzzler tax, the penalty slapped on thirsty vehicles, was written to apply to passenger cars while exempting light trucks entirely, so a heavy SUV could drink gas freely without ever paying the fee a comparable car would owe. Then gas prices dropped through the 1990s, fuel worries faded for a while, and buyers happily climbed up into bigger and taller trucks. The station wagon, stuck in the strict car category and earning the manufacturer thinner profits, simply got starved out. The Ford Country Squire, that wood grain icon that ran from 1950 all the way to 1991, saw its sales collapse to under 4,000 units in its final year. Ford pulled the wagon body entirely and pointed the Panther platform at the Crown Victoria sedan instead. The Buick Roadmaster wagon held on until 1996, and then the big American wagon was effectively gone, not because buyers stopped wanting a great family car, but because a regulation made the great family car the wrong business decision. Now, here's the twist that turns this whole story into something almost absurd, because the SUV that replaced the wagon eventually turned back into a wagon, just a worse one. Stay with me, because this is the proof that ties everything together. Look at the best-selling vehicles in America right now: the Toyota RAV4, the Honda CR-V, the Subaru Outback. We call them SUVs and crossovers, but mechanically they are unibody vehicles with car-based platforms, 2 rows of seats, and a cargo area out back. Strip away the marketing and the plastic cladding and the raised ride height, and what you are actually looking at is a tall station wagon. The Subaru Outback barely even pretends otherwise, since it began life as a lifted legacy wagon. Yet under the CADER's rules, these tall wagons get classified as light trucks, which means they qualify for that same relaxed standard the old Country Squire was never allowed to touch. The wagon never lost the public's affection. The industry simply killed it, jacked it up a few inches, and sold it back to us as something new. So when you stand in a parking lot today, surrounded by a sea of nearly identical crossovers, you're really looking at the station wagon in disguise, just heavier, taller, and less fun to drive. The old wagons had lower centers of gravity, so they cornered flatter and rode smoother. They had that long, low roofline that designers actually styled with care, instead of the upright box dictated by pedestrian impact rules and the desire to look rugged. They gave you skylights and magic doorgates and rear-facing seats and, in the wildest cases, a Corvette engine, all without pretending to be something they weren't. A 1996 Roadmaster estate would still embarrass a modern crossover in a straight line, outhaul it on cargo, and turn more heads at a gas station. And it would do all of that wearing fake wood paneling without a hint of shame. That's the real proof, and it's why I think the station wagon deserves better than the punchline it usually gets. It was the rare vehicle that was practical and stylish and quick all at once, a family car with the heart of a hot rod, and it didn't disappear because it failed. It disappeared because a fuel economy loophole made the boring choice the profitable one, and we've been driving the consequences ever since. The crossover won the sales charts, but the wagon won the argument, because every time a new RAV4 or CR-V rolls off the line, it's quietly admitting that the long, low, wood-paneled family hauler had the right idea all along. So the next time someone tells you a station wagon is uncool, you can just smile and tell them their SUV is one. And the funny part is that the wagon is quietly winning people back. Enthusiasts now pay real money for clean examples of the Buick Roadmaster estate and the Chevrolet Caprice wagon, with values climbing on auction sites that used to treat them as throwaway grocery getters. European brands kept the flame burning the whole time, since since Volvo built its entire reputation on the boxy, indestructible 240 wagon, and Audi turned the Avant and BMW the Touring into objects of genuine desire among people who actually care about driving. A long, low wagon with a strong engine and a manual gearbox is, for a certain kind of car person, the most quietly cool vehicle you can park in a driveway, precisely because it refuses to shout about itself. The market spent 30 years chasing the tall, rugged crossover look, and now a growing crowd is circling right back to the exact long roof silhouette the loophole pushed off the road. If this changed how you see that boxy thing in your neighbor's driveway, you already know what to do. So stick around, because the cars Detroit killed have a way of becoming the ones everybody suddenly wants back.